Hi everybody, it's Tamara from Moogly, and I am back with another live. It's April 29th, 2020, and it is definitely a weird time we're living through. I just came from Facebook where I talked about all the latest happenings on Moogly. If you go to the link in the description, you should be able to see, there's a link to the Facebook page. I'll be putting up the live there shortly when I get off here, and I'll be embedding this video there as well. But also what you'll find at the link in the description is all the links to the current giveaways and patterns, things you might have missed, especially if you're only watching the YouTube. So definitely do check that out. And in particular, one thing I wanted to cover before we get into the meat of today's live is that I have 2 more lives coming up tomorrow. Tomorrow I will be on the Yarn Inspirations page. Excuse me, hopefully not losing my voice. I will be on the Yarn Inspirations page for their Lunch and Learn, and that's at 12 p.m. Eastern. And so I will be there. Hopefully you'll come check that out. And then right after at 12 p.m. Central, so a little bit afterwards, I will be doing a Zoom hangout with some other designers, sort of a designer crochet chat via Zoom. So there is a link at the link in the description for that as well. So hopefully you can check us out either at 11 Eastern or noon Eastern, or I guess it would be 11 Eastern for the lunch and 12. Oh gosh, I'm getting these mixed up. It's 12 p.m. Eastern for the Lunch and Learn, and then 1 p.m. Eastern for the Zoom Hangout. See, time zones are difficult, you guys. But the links are there, so definitely do check that out at the link in the description. Now, before we get too far into this, I want to make sure I can bring up this video so I can follow along and read your comments and questions. So I'm going to try and get that up right now. YouTube always wants to delay a little bit before showing me the lives. So let's see here. If I can get this to come up, that would be super duper helpful. YouTube is not showing me the video. Well, hopefully I'm actually live right now because I can't tell, and I apologize for that. Normally I like to be able to answer you guys' questions, but it's just not showing up for me at my end. Oh, here we are. I found us. Yay. Okay. And people are watching. I can see your comments. Thank you. Sorry about that, guys. Thanks for bearing with me. Always difficult to get the technology working right away. So hi, Chris and Francis. Oh, Francis, I'm so glad to see you. Rainbow Crochet, Linda, Michelle, Naomi, Tammy, Valeda, Christine, Thea, Francis again. Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. All right. So today's topic, how to Russian join yarn. Now, normally I'm a big fan of when I need to switch skeins in the middle of a project, I've run out or I'm switching colors. What I really usually like to do is I will either finish off the stitch and then with the old color and then join the new color with a standing stitch and then weave in those ends. If I'm not changing colors or depending on where I'm in the project, I might instead yarn over with the new color when I'm finishing the last stitch of the other color or the other skein, I should say, and continue from there. There's just, you want to use a different technique depending on what the project is. Not every technique is going to work for every project, and not every technique is going to work for every yarn. So there's lots of different variables to take into account, but the more tools we have, the more apt we are to be able to find just the right technique for the project and the yarn we're working on in the moment. So the Russian join is essentially, it's sort of weaving in the ends on themselves to attach the yarns together. And I'll demonstrate that here for you in a minute. But the first thing you need to know about it is that it's not going to work on chenille type yarns or thread or anything where you can't really get into the ply. You need to have ideally a plied yarn that isn't overly slick. So I really wouldn't use this technique for something necessarily like a really smooth silk. Anything where you're having trouble weaving in those ends anyway, it's not going to be a good technique for this because you need the yarn to sort of grip onto itself and you need to be able to send a needle through the center of the yarn. So a chenille style yarn, for instance, I've got here some Bernat blanket. This is the skein I used to do all my swatching with, so it's just a random skein. But you can see if I hold up the string here to the camera, hopefully, this is a really fuzzy yarn. It's not plied at all. It feels like there's like a cord inside almost that all the fuzziness is attached to. And so you wouldn't be able to sew into the middle of this. You wouldn't be able to send a needle down along the strand, which is what we're going to be doing. So a chenille style yarn would not work with this technique. And then I don't think you'd have much luck using, like I say, using it with any sort of thready. This is Red Heart It's a Wrap Sprinkles. Gorgeous yarn, just like Burnett Blanket. Love the yarn. Not a good candidate for the Russian join because it has these threads that aren't really tightly plied or wound together. And even if they were, you would need like the world's tiniest needle in order to pull this off. So think about the yarn you're using, think about the project, and then let's go ahead and come down to the table here and look at what the Russian join looks like. So here I have, I'm trying to hold it up a little bit here closer to the camera. Here I have two different colors that I've Russian joined together. And as you can see, it kind of looks like one flows right into the other. What I've been using for this demo here, so you know it works with this one, is Red Heart Scrubby Smoothie, which is a cotton yarn, but it does stick. And after I've made this join, you can see I pull on it and it is not coming apart. It's important when you do this to always test your join afterwards to make sure it is tight, that it's not going to just fall apart on you later. There's nothing worse than getting finished with a project and realizing some tiny little end has come undone and the whole thing is in danger. So normally when you would use the Russian join, you would be joining the same color. Here I've used two different colors just for demonstration purposes so you can really see where it's happened. But normally you would want to do this when you are keeping to the same color, because if you're changing colors, you are probably wanting that color change to happen at a very specific point, and this isn't going to be quite as exact. You'd have to really take a lot of time to make sure that this color change happens exactly where you need it to be. But if you are using the same color and you've got the right yarn for it, this can be a really great technique to get that really smooth line across. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out this section right here so I can do it again. And I will just set that one aside. So again, I'm going to be demonstrating with two separate colors just to make it a little bit easier to see. So in addition to a yarn that's going to work for these purposes, you also are going to need a yarn needle, of course, but ideally it should be one with a pretty good point. This would be sort of an embroidery style needle. So it's got a real sharp point on it, but it's still got the larger eye opening for yarn. So what I'm going to do first, oh, and then the other thing I almost forgot, you'll also want to have a stitch marker or something like that around. Not every tutorial I've seen for the Russian join uses a stitch marker, but I think it's a really helpful tool to have. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to get my yarn on the needle. Often a little bit of a challenge, but we just take our time and pull it through. Some people like to lick their yarn. I do not like to lick my yarn. I love yarn, but I don't love yarn fibers in my mouth. There we go. So I've got the yarn on the needle. And then before I actually do anything else, I want to go ahead. I'm just going to put the stitch marker right around. Let me get that centered. Sorry. I'm looking at what I'm doing rather than the monitor. I'm going to get that stitch marker right around my yarn. And then I'm going to pass it, so to speak. I'm going to go over it and keep it in the fold of my yarn here. This is going to help me make sure that I don't pull this yarn through so tight that I can't get back in here to add the other yarn, because I'm going to need to leave a little hole here to add the other yarn with. So once I've got the stitch marker on there and I've got my yarn on the needle, I'm just going to go ahead and work the needle right down the center of that yarn. And this is where it is so helpful to have applied yarn. If you need to, you can sort of unply it, untwist it a little bit as needed, whatever is easiest for you to get that yarn needle right down that yarn. And it doesn't have to be completely in the center the whole time. If you come out and you need to go back in, that's fine too. But you just want to take your time and work down the yarn back towards, working towards the skein itself, away from the end, for about the length of the needle. And then what you can do, and I like to actually scrunch it up a little bit to do this and work it off, is you need to pull, I'm pulling on the right strand here, pull that yarn end then right on through the yarn. And sometimes this takes a minute, and that's okay. And that's one of the reasons I have that stitch marker on there, is because it's real easy to accidentally pull this all the way through and close that hole up. So you can see I've got the yarn needle all the way through, so I'm just going to go ahead and pull that little end on out here. There we are. And pull the needle out, and then I can straighten the yarn back out like so. And there I have one side done, and then I can just trim off that excess when I'm all done. But because we had that little stitch marker in there, you can see there's still a hole, hopefully right there in the end of the yarn. So now I can go ahead and set that one aside and get my second skein on the needle here. There we go. All right, and then I am going to hold that hole open right there with that hand and set the yarn needle, or the stitch marker rather, aside. Then I can take that needle, trying to get a clear shot here, a little tricky with the overhead camera. Go that right through that hole with the new yarn, like so. And then I'm just going to do the same thing here. Now I don't need to use a stitch marker on this one because it's already going through that yarn. But I just want to take my needle and go right down the center of that bit of yarn. And again, you can untwist it if you need to for about the length of your needle, or as long as you need to feel safe. The slicker the yarn, probably the longer I would go. And then we just work that one on through. Oops. Like I say, I always want to grab the wrong side of my loop there. There we go. Just squish it on through if it's easier. I find it's easier with this yarn to squish it through and then pull out my end. Where'd that end go? There we are. And then I can pull off the needle and straighten the yarn back out and trim off those ends. And there we have it again, another Russian join. Like I said, there's a little extra yarn there on the ends, so you can trim those off nice and close, or take your needle, rethread it, and weave in a bit more. Now, the bulkier the yarn that you do this with, the more bulk, obviously, doing this is going to add. So that's something to take into account, too. Even if it had a really good weave, I might not do this with like a jumbo yarn because that's going to make it just so very thick. But I think if you have a bulky or a worsted or a DK or a sport, as long as you've got the right size needle, that is part of the tricky part. Finding these sharp needles can be a little more difficult. But as long as you've got the right size needle and the right type of yarn, this can be just another handy way to join your yarn when you need to switch yarns. So another trick for your crochet toolbox, or knitting toolbox for that matter. Obviously it works both, works really great for either one. So you can give it a try. So if we'll come back up here, there we are. All right, thanks. I will go ahead and check your comments here and see if there's any other questions. Let's see. Oh gosh, you guys have been chatty. So hi Marley, thanks for tuning in. So glad you guys are here. Oh my gosh, thank you guys. Hope you guys are doing great. People from all over the country, Spain and everywhere. So thank you so much. Yeah, the Russian join, it is a controversial technique. Like I said, it's not going to work for every yarn and every project. It's definitely, just like I say, it's another technique, always a good one to have. It's good to have options. We'll just put it that way. I always like being able to pull out just the right one. So thank you so much, Di and Thea. Oh yeah, the stitch marker I think is, I think it's a handy trick because I can't tell you how many times I have tried to use the Russian join and I didn't put that stitch marker in there. I learned real quick. You've got to have something in there. Otherwise you pull that first loop through and it just disappears and you can't get back in there. So thank you so much. Oh, and Marley, you asked, what am I wearing? Thank you for asking. This is the Color Block Cocoon. This is a piece I crocheted for the Crochet Guild of America Crochet Along. I believe it was the March Crochet Along. So it was exclusively for that, and I will be releasing the pattern to the general public pretty soon. My plate's been pretty full. I know, Marley, yours has been too, as has everybody else's right now. But hopefully I'll have the pattern for this up available in general soon as well. Otherwise, the Crochet Along for the CGOA got it first. Speaking of CGOA, for those who haven't heard, I'll go ahead and talk about that just a little bit. We have unfortunately had to go ahead and cancel the 22 Chain Link Conference. Letters went out for that earlier. I don't know if it was earlier this week. I guess it was late last week. It is a bummer. Obviously, I was very much looking forward to going to New Orleans and seeing everybody in July. Obviously, with everything going on in the world right now, we have had to cancel it. However, I am excited to say that we'll hopefully be able to go back to New Orleans someday in the future. And of course, primarily we want to keep everybody safe. And we're looking at some other options too. So there will be some more fun things hopefully down the pike with that. But other than that, right now, I'll be doing those lives tomorrow, but other than that, my next live appearance, so to speak, would be Stitches Midwest in the fall. So fingers crossed that's able to go forward, but we shall have to wait and see. So let's see. Oh, thank you. And so Brianna, thank you. Karen say I wrap my second yarn in at the start like the marker. Yeah, that would work too. I think I would probably just drop it, knowing me. But yes, that can be a good alternative too. If you don't have a stitch marker handy, make sure you get that second piece of yarn sort of looped around there. Leave a nice long end. You can pull it back through. That would be a great way to do it too, for sure. Do I have any info on the virtual conference? Obviously, the Crochet Guild of America, it's a volunteer-run organization, so we can't move super fast, but we are definitely trying to figure out how to do as much as we can virtually. Things like the design competition have been completely postponed till 2021. And simply because that involves mailing packages to people, and of course we all know that's a little iffy right now. And somebody would have to do a whole lot of work to get that organized at home 100% right now. Not really viable. But for everything else that we can do virtually, we're definitely talking to the teachers. Not every teacher is set up to go virtual, and not every teacher necessarily wants to go virtual in every class. Not every class can be taught virtually. But for those that can, we're definitely looking into it, trying to figure it out. We're very lucky that we have a great management company that works with other organizations that are already, that have already had to do this and go through it and figure it out. So they'll be helping us with that as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can do with that. And I think it'll be a good thing for the future too. Obviously, it's a bummer not to have the conference this year, and it's a bit of a blow. But I think, it's a virtual world we live in, and we've gotten some really supportive letters from our members. It's been really wonderful. Everybody's been super understanding, which has been great. So that's been good. It's been good, and we'll have more information as soon as we can, but it's a big learning curve for us too, so we're figuring it out. Let's see. Where is the info on the Zoom thing? If you go to the link in the description, or right now, the very first post on mooglyblog.com, there is the post with my picture and today's lives. And, the lives aren't there yet. I have to finish them first and then embed them. But at the bottom of the post, the Zoom one tomorrow has a link right there. And then remember, before that, I will be on the Yarnspirations Facebook page. And that one has a link in the blog post as well. So do check those out, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. So any other questions? Let's see here. It looks like that is most of the questions answered. Just want to make sure I don't leave anybody hanging. Let's see. Are you a fan? Marley wants to know if I'm a fan of the Russian joint. And it's one of those things. I use it once in a while, but not all the time for sure. Just depends on the project. So it looks like, Naomi has a question. One more popped up here. Do you have to be a designer to be part of the guild? Absolutely not. The Crochet Guild of America was started by hobbyists, I believe. There's hobbyist members, there are professionals. It's for absolutely everybody, and it's a great deal. It is probably my least expensive membership to any organization, we'll put it that way. And it has some great benefits too, including a subscription to Crochet magazine. So yeah, it's absolutely for everybody. It's for professionals, it's for aspiring professionals, it's for people who just love to crochet. And generally speaking, the Chainlink Conference is a whole lot of fun, and I'm definitely looking forward to 2021, which we have announced will be in Denver. So that's very exciting. As much as I'm looking forward to visiting New Orleans someday, I love Denver, and I'm excited to go back for that one as well. So that is that. And yeah, I think that's all the questions for today. It is lunchtime here, so I'm going to go ahead and eat some lunch and then check on my kids' schoolwork. All part of our new day, right? I was saying earlier, my youngest just turned 13 last week, so we are right in the middle of that with 2 middle schoolers. So lots of fun. So good luck to all of you out there also dealing with all of these new adventures right now and challenges. And those working from home and those not working right now. I know things are crazy, but hopefully we'll all get through it together. So stay safe, wash your hands, keep crafting, and I'll talk to you later. Bye, everybody.